Herbert Allen is a towering figure in the world of finance and business. He's also a paradox, a quiet and modest individual who is one of the most important deal makers in big business today, especially in the entertainment world. In fact, a former president of Comcast Cablevision once said, "When it comes to Hollywood investment banking, all roads lead through Herbert." Mr. Allen is also irreverent, goes against conventional wisdom, and is not afraid to speak his mind. He's been quoted as saying, "Over a long weekend, I could teach my dog to be an investment banker." So much for MBA programs. He attended Hackley School in Tarrytown, New York, and then Williams College, graduating in 1962, after which he joined the family business Allen and Company, and the rest, as they say, is history. Today, he's one of the most creative individuals in the business world. Back in early 2000, Tom Brokaw of NBC News organized an effort to establish a scholarship fund at Williams in honor of Herbert Allen. Mr. Allen is a loyal supporter of the arts and of education, and of Williams College in particular. In fact, he was the principal donor of this very building, the 62 Center for Theater and Dance. Thus, it seems appropriate that we come together here to speak with this great man. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Herbert A. Allen. Herbert?
Thank you. Thanks, Fred. Thank you.
How are you?
Pleased that my dog died before she saw this investment banking debacle.
Well, have you been on the stage before?
No, I've never been on the stage here.
What did you think at any time to maybe name the building? I mean, this could have been the Herbert A. Allen Center for the Theater and Arts.
No, Morty was very kind about that, but it didn't make any sense to me.
Is there anything named after you?
My first son.
I see. Well, you can't top that.
I think that's
pretty
enough.
good.
You know.
I have a lot of things I want to get to with you, but I thought let's just start with the crass things and get that out of the way. All right. So I want to talk about your wealth for a moment, and then we can move on. Okay.
Do you want me involved, or are you just?
No, I think I can handle it pretty well, actually. Especially if you give me the checkbook, I can take care of it quite nicely. So, I mean, as you know, even though you're a private figure, your financial wealth, and I don't know if it's correctly stated or not, is always in the news. The Forbes puts you on their top whatever. I mean, you're ranked 227th this year, richest person in the universe or something, or in the United States. Is it weird to have that kind of thing out there? Does that bother you? Are you used to it? Is it neat? Do you like it?
Just so you understand, Forbes does no research, has absolutely no basis for coming up with an estimate, and it doesn't make any difference to me. They don't know what they're talking about. But that's usually the case, I think, of a lot of the media. If you know what's going on, the story is usually never too accurate.
So you're not conscious of that. They don't come in one year and say, "Oh, you're up to 219," and you're like, "Yes, I made progress." You don't.
I haven't yet.
I see. Do you know? And I won't ask, but do you know your approximate worth? Like, do you keep track of that, or it's too complicated to know?
No, I know that it's easier to count today than it was a month ago.
Yeah. Do you think so? Would you say that you took a hit of more or less than 20% over the past few months?
Oh, less probably, but I really don't know.
Really?
No, not the slightest idea.
When do you think the economy is going to turn around?
Well, I'm not an economist. Ask Morty; he's a better economist. But I would think a long time, longer than the estimates that I'm hearing. Unemployment, I think, will be higher than I'm hearing. I'm not sure I'm the right one to ask these questions, but I'd be surprised if unemployment didn't hit double figures. We're in a very deep hole created by ourselves and created by debt, and we put a lot of air in the balloon. It's gone. It's going to be a whole new way of living for virtually everybody in the country.
What do you think that institutions of higher learning should be doing to brace for that?
Well, I think they're somewhat inviolate, even though they may lose 35% of their theoretical net worth. I think what they should be doing is investigating their endowments to see how much they have in alternative investments and finding out who's doing the marks. In other words, who's in the value of the invest. Let's say Williams is worth $1 billion, 2 or 3 today. How much is in alternatives? How much is in hedge funds? Who's telling you what they're worth? And find out what they're really worth. You can't do much else. And then revise your policies because you're going to take a whale of a hit.
Now, do you think there'll be a change? We'll see an economic change with the new leadership that'll be moving into Washington in January?
Well, there has to be a change. I mean, there has to be a change in supervision, not from this administration. I didn't vote for George Bush, but I don't share. And in a campaign, a candidate is going to say that he caused all the problems. These are problems that started well over 20 years ago. But I think there'll be a major change in supervision, regulation, whatever that means. The rest of the changes will take care of themselves, and a lot of people are going to go broke.
So you think 10 years? How long would you project? I know that you...
I don't have the slightest idea. I think the country is resilient. It'll come back. I don't think there's another country on earth that can touch us. But it's going to take, it's going to take a while. We don't know how deep the hole is because we don't know how much debt is out there. I get a different figure every day I ask somebody. And a lot of this stuff I don't understand. I don't understand really the derivative market. I brought some things here to give out to the audience that Al Early sent me. It was a class of 62. And it's a fairly vulgar, relatively obscene diagram of how this all came about. But I didn't bring enough copies because, frankly, I thought there'd be about 30 or 40 people. And so if the rest of you wouldn't mind leaving, then you can read. But anyway, I'll give it out. I don't know. I mean, certainly a couple of years, and maybe 5 or 6. I think it'll be in sectors. Because I don't think all of a sudden we're all going to wake up and say everything is nice now.
So we just had an election. We just elected a new president. And as with any election, there's always, winners and losers. And part of the thing that I like to think about are the downside, the people that actually, lost. Now, you have actually known a lot of people who've run for president and lost. Some of them are your friends. Can you share some thoughts about either Walter Mondale or Hubert Humphrey?
They never get over it. Or Hubert Humphrey?
Yeah.
Yeah, they never get over it. I don't think politicians ever get over the rejection of the American public. And so from that standpoint, it's an emotional thing. Politicians and actors have a lot in common, and which is not denigrating either, except the politicians read more. But I think they understand less. But for the most part, they just never get over it. And it'll be easier for McCain because he's a little older than I am, so he doesn't have as long to worry about it.
But it is hard. I mean, I don't know if you watched him, make his speech that night. And I was thinking to myself, this is really difficult. He's standing in front of the world and admitting that he lost. And that's a very hard thing for anyone to do.
It's like an actor failing. Politicians have the emotional consistency of the actors because they have the need of the love of strangers. And when they don't get it, it's devastating to them. And I've never known one that was different from any other.
Tell us something about either Humphrey or Mondale.
Well, Humphrey was a very kind man, very smart, great personality, good dancer, although I never danced with him. But he was an all-round guy. He was a very regular, decent fellow who loved people. Mondale, more reclusive, more reflective, probably one of the responsible parties for the passage of the Civil Rights Acts. If you go back the last 40 years, I think everybody would agree that that's one of the open housing, or fair housing, and the various Civil Rights Acts were the most significant thing that's happened in this country in 40 years legislatively. Fundamentally decent, Midwest, very simple man. Understood a lot, but didn't understand a lot, frankly, about capitalism. Didn't really understand why people wanted to make money. And I remember driving him once across the Triborough Bridge and having him look to the left. I picked him up at LaGuardia, and he said almost to himself, he said, "Why would anybody want to live there?" Of course, it's my hometown he's talking about. But so there's a lot. He was in many ways worldly, in many ways provincial.
Is that why you think he lost?
No, he ran against Ronald Reagan. Nobody was going to beat Reagan. It was Reagan's time. No, it was Obama's time. Nobody was going to beat Obama. As a matter of fact, the only thing that surprised me about this election was I thought the plurality would be larger.
All right, now let's talk about you. So now we got that out of the way. I feel better now.
Good.
You don't have to worry about that. So I want to talk about you, which is a subject that I find interesting, and I know that you're not a big fan of talking about you. Is that right?
Well, I'm sitting here, Ed.
I appreciate that. Well, and I appreciate that you stayed so long.
I'm a volunteer.
Actually, I thought you'd be out by now. So, so you graduated from Williams in '62. Do you remember those days at all, being here?
I remember them because Bruce Grinnell always reminds me of them.
I see.
And, he reminds me of all the things that he did and that I didn't do when I was here. But yeah,
what
sure.
Was your major? What was your major?
American History and Literature.
And did you have any idea while you were here, not after you left, but while you were here, what your plan was? What you were going to do after you graduated, what you were thinking about?
Survival, for the most part, just to get through the school. But, as a matter of fact, Fred Rudolph almost ruined my reputation here because there was one time C- was absolute perfection in my eyes. And, as a matter of fact, it was higher than most of my grades. But Fred once gave me an A, and I said, oh, God, this guy's ruined my reputation because what if they think I have a half a brain? The others will realize I've just been slacking off for 4 years. And I think Fred will remember that I had to go up to him and ask him to lower the grade, which he wouldn't do. So I remember that. And
did you deliberately? So I heard something about you. Tell me if this is true. I heard that you tried to have the lowest GPA from the graduates of the class of '62. Is that true or false?
No, I achieved that naturally.
I see. That required no effort.
No.
Why was it? I mean, was it this you were not inspired to do it, or you were doing other things? Or
I think I was.
Were you trying to be a rebel?
I don't think. No, I wasn't trying to be a rebel. I think you just do what you do. And I was young and immature and lazy, and had no interest in going to college. And probably, if my parents had been strict, they probably would have put me in the Marine Corps or something.
So if it were up to you, you wouldn't have gone to college?
That's right.
What would you want to have done instead?
Nothing. That's basically what I was doing all the time. You're 18 years old. What does anybody want to do?
Yeah. All right, settle down. So, okay, now you have an uncle, Charles, and your father is also named Herbert, and they started in the 20s this company.
Yes, they started in 1922. They're both dead, so the tense is a little wrong.
They founded this company, though, in 22. Okay.
Yes.
And so tell me about them a little bit.
Well, they were two boys from the west side of New York. When poverty was defined as not having shelter, clothing, or food, they were poor. And my uncle started his Allen Company in 1922, and I don't think he had $50. I don't know. You probably couldn't. Well, maybe you could. A couple of years ago you could have. Today you couldn't. But he was a brilliant, reclusive. He was probably a genius. My father was not a genius, but he was extremely smart, very good with people, a great trader. And in the 30s, they went broke. And my father kept the place alive trading while my uncle was waiting, basically, until the 40s when he hit on a couple of big deals. As a matter of fact, I don't know if this story is true, because I don't know. From that generation, there are a lot of stories, and you never know what's true. But my father had called my uncle the day the market broke in October and told him how great he had done because he was short the stocks. And my uncle said, well, that's unfortunate because I was long the same stocks. And I think it's probably true. But anyway, they were broke. And then they did very well in the 40s and started investing in things for their own account. Always a small firm, as it is today. I mean, we only have 172 people.
What did you admire about those guys?
Just as people. I didn't care about the business much, because I didn't know anything about business. But they're just very decent people and treated everybody very well, and they were fun to be around.
So you graduate in '62, and then you basically immediately join the family business.
That's right.
And was that something that you wanted to do, or you just had to do something? And
no, I still maintained the same status as when I was 18. I didn't really want to do much of anything, but I, in those days we had a draft, and I thought I was either going to be drafted or go into some form of the military. And so my father said, well, you got to do something. So come down, sit on a trading desk for a while. And so I did. And then it was sort of like the man who came to dinner. I was 1Y, I was married, then I had children. But you go through the whole thing. I had asthma, so I was 4F, and luckily. And they weren't pressed too much for soldiers in that era. It was before Vietnam. And I just stayed. And then
At that period, was your dad saying, gee whiz, this guy is not doing anything. We got to put him behind a desk? Or was he saying, oh, no, this is good. You're young. It's okay?
we never talked about it. I don't know.
So then a few years later, you start, they basically say you're going to start the investment bank, the Allen
No,
Company.
not really.
Right?
What happened
was... You became
was...
president of that at like 26.
I was 26, but I was president of nothing. They created a corporation.
Well, they gave you like $1 million, didn't they, to do that?
No, we put up... I'll get to that. What we did was they found that underwriting created unlimited liability. And having come from nothing, they were not interested in going back to the same neighborhood. And so they created a corporation, which if we ever did underwritings, which we didn't do anyway, that became the Allen Company Incorporated, that I became the president of. They looked around, so they said, somebody's got to be the president. And it was a little like the Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland movie. I can't remember which one it was, but where they said, you be the director, I'll be the producer. You know, that type of thing. They said, well, he's sitting over there doing nothing, make him the president. And it grew from that. We hit a bull market. We were lucky.
But did you know? I mean, so what did you do? I mean, you didn't know anything.
Not
so
much.
What were you doing? I mean, what were you doing?
Much.
You were president of
Well,
this...
knowing nothing in investment banking is not a drawback. It's really only bad when you export your ignorance to other people, which is really what's happened recently. But I started trading. I was okay at that, and institutional trading, and then I started doing some underwritings. It sort of grew step by step.
Did you make any really big mistakes early on that you said, oh, gee, that was...
Not the first 3 or 4 years. And I remember driving up the West Side Highway thinking I'm not learning anything. That was 1969. Then the market broke. And then I remember driving up the highway thinking I'm learning too much. And because it was from 69 to about 76 or 7, there was nothing. I'd gotten involved in a few things that paid off later on, but those were not great years.
Now, so, the famous story is, I guess around 1973 or so, the great producer, Ray Stark, came to you and had this idea, which was that Columbia Pictures wasn't doing very well at the time. I think the stock was around $2 a share, and he had a lot of faith in the company, and he kind of captured your imagination to buy a bunch of stock. And you did, but your uncle and father didn't think this was a great idea.
Well, they didn't invest in it. We never really discussed it because we always had separate businesses. And I think the reason we got along was we had separate businesses. But Ray was a brilliant producer and a very demanding fellow. And if he was on you for something, you did it over time. Because I remember Sidney Pollack did a movie with him called The Way We Were. And Sidney threw Ray off his own picture. He disliked him so much. And they got in a fight. And Sidney came up to me after the picture and he said, I know he's your friend, but I'll never talk to this so-and-so again. I'll never deal with him again. 1 year later, they did a picture called The Electric Horseman. And I said, isn't he the guy you told me you'd never do business with again? And he said, yeah. He said, well, if Ray wants something enough, he says, you might as well give in because he's going to get it. And Ray wanted him. And he wanted me in the company. He was a general creditor. He owned back-end pieces of movies, and Columbia was broke. And he thought that we could, the Allen Company I had then could do something and at least make it solvent. And it worked.
What were the concerns, though, that your father and uncle had?
I don't know.
So you bought this thing. You bought it about 7%. You had 7% of the company.
I think they probably made a reasonable judgment. If this fellow's in it, we really shouldn't follow him because he has no particular record. Speaking of me.
I see.
Yeah. So I think that was it. But
so the fact that you were enthusiastic about it made them say.
I really don't know. I never discussed it with them.
So you got it, and then of course this was one of the great investments of all time, right?
Turned out well.
Can you tell us a little bit about how well that came out for you?
Well, actually Williams College had a lot to do with it because in the long run, Bob Stone from here, who was one of the great executives we had, Fay Vincent, who ran the company, who did very well, Dick Gallup, who's dead, but who was invaluable to us, and Ray Stark, and a fellow named David Beagleman, who actually got himself in a lot of trouble faking 3 checks and had basically a mental breakdown. But he's the one who turned it around. If one person turned it around, it was Beagleman. But he did it by making good pictures and good television shows that made money, very basic things. And the stock I can't really remember the numbers. So I think this Coca-Cola came along and bought it from us in 1981 too, which is a little bit like being touched by God, and if God had the money. But Coke then took off on its own. So a shareholder who bought in with us, let's say at $2 or $3 a share, ended up, I guess, a couple of $1,000s of value in Coke stock. The dividends today on Coke are probably 5 times the cost of the stock then. But it's luck. It's mostly luck. It's how would you know? I didn't know anything when I got involved. Didn't know anything about the business, and thank God we had Bob and we had Fay and the other people who really knew how to run a business.
Do you think of yourself as a creative person?
Not particularly.
Tell us about how you run your business. It's very small. You already said 100.
Well, my son now runs the business, and he's created his own corporation. Pretty much the same model. I don't like the word model, but let's use it. Where he has his own corporation. What I have left now is the portfolio of the old corporation. And so the way that I did run it was we had 8 or 10 top people. They weren't paid they weren't even paid a living wage, but they got paid a percentage of what they produced or what deals they worked on that were successful, and they shared in the losses, which I think wouldn't be a bad thing if we had it back today. Today Wall Street, they make the profits, they don't have any of the losses, and everybody in this room puts up the money and pays them their bonuses. That's a very peculiar system to me. But it was very simple, and you had 8 or 10 very talented people, and I trusted them. And frankly, I may have organized it, but they led the way.
But I mean, it is a creative operation. You do things in a very different way than most other companies. I mean, for example, you have no analysts that work for you, right?
Right.
So tell me you're thinking about that. That's a little strange to have an investment company and you have no one there to analyze
Well, I like
things.
to have people around me who are at risk. And what does an analyst have to lose if she or he is wrong? Plus the fact I never met an analyst who ever told me anything that was interesting. So, why? I'm not saying they're bad people, but in terms of the business, I have no use for them.
And you just make a distinction between a buyer and a seller, and you say that what your company basically is a bunch of buyers.
Well, what the people do who are in deals in the firm that I had was they put up their own money. In other words, they'd come into my office. They were all well-trained. They all certainly know a lot more than I did. And they'd recommend a situation. Not Columbia, but because actually none of them wanted that. But they recommend a situation, and I'm still relatively lazy and don't want to do an awful lot of work, so I ask them how much of it they want. And I know their net worth, and I know their habits, and I know their expertise, and if they tell me they want a significant piece of it, then I'll say, okay, we'll do it, because they're on the line. And I believe very strongly in personal risk and reward. I believe not at all in what's going on today.
Well, and isn't it true that sometimes clients or people that you've helped or collaborated with would want to actually pay you some kind of fee, and you would say no?
A couple of times.
Right? There's this QVC story, right?
Well, that was a winner-take-all. No, it was what we didn't win.
Right, so, but the fellow still wanted to pay you
$3
$3 million, and you kept saying no. Right. So tell the story. So this fellow sent Herbert. May I call you Herbert?
Well, let's wait till we get to know each
All
other.
Right.
Sure.
Sent Mr. Allen a check. They were trying to. So you know QVC, the television station, where you can buy like Joan Rivers jewelry. But it's huge. I mean, it's huge. It's really huge. I mean, it's a huge thing. And they were trying to buy some things, and so Mr. Allen was helping, and then it apparently didn't go well. They didn't close the deal. But the president still wanted to pay Herbert for his services and sent you a check for like $1 million or something, and you sent it back, and then he sent it again, and you sent it back. That's an interesting way of doing business. Except that I happen to know the postscript is that you ended up getting about $15 million from him instead of the $1 million, which was actually a very clever way of doing business if you think about it. So this is a creativity, whether you want to admit it or not.
Well, we sent it back 15 times. No. No, I think that was on a different deal. No, I think in that deal that we said that if we don't win, we don't get paid, and we didn't win. So that's fairly simple. I think the other one you might be referring to was where Sumner Redstone sent over $1 million, but we didn't do anything for him.
So you sent it right back?
Yes.
Now, like you mentioned already that your son Herb is now running the thing. Is that weird to give up the reins of power? Are you proud? Do you think of him like your father thought of you? As kind of.
I have no idea, but I think pride is always a peculiar word when you talk about a child, because you really have so little to do with the creation of their good things, and I think that he does well. So I'm pleased. If he stopped tomorrow and wasn't in the business tomorrow, it wouldn't make any difference to me.
So we have a mutual friend, Faye Vincent, who we talked with a few months ago. And he said that I should ask you, because I love talking about failure, and he said that I should ask you about the Liberty Equities story and what you learned from that. Now, I don't even know what that means.
Well, Liberty Equities was, we did an underwriting, a private placement of $20 million of bonds around 1969, and it turned out to be a fraud. And they were convertible bonds. Actually, I thought it was a great deal for everybody who bought it, and about 4 weeks later, Bob Werble, who lives in this town, called and said, "What do you think of the Liberty loss?" I said, "What loss?" Anyway, it was a fraud. And the fellow was keeping phony books, and he paid off the auditors. And Faye ended up being the lawyer for the other side. So we became reacquainted after not seeing each other for 8 years. But you only learn from losing. I don't think you ever learn from winning. I'm sure somebody does, but I never did. And it was a fascinating experience. Not the least of which was going to Geneva to tell Bernie Kornfeld that he'd lost all his money when I didn't realize he was so coked up he couldn't hear a word I was saying. I kept thinking it was just the fit of his pants. I couldn't understand what was going on. But,
were you scared? I mean, that scare you?
Yes, that did. Because I figured I'd lost everything. Because I thought we'd have to pay the money back. It was such a stupid deal to do. It was so remarkably stupid that
what kind of level are we talking? Was it hundreds of millions of dollars?
No. It was about $20 million. In those days, that was hundreds of millions of dollars.
What year was this?
69.
Oh, okay. This was a while ago. Yeah. And so, what did you learn from that? What was the lesson for you?
Well, first of all, to check things out more thoroughly. Obviously, the fellow had a great reputation in Washington, and his name was Wyatt Dickerson. I don't know if you remember Nancy Dickerson used to be on NBC News. He had a beautiful house on the Potomac. Everything looked good, but there was nothing underneath it. But I think basically learned if I didn't have the capacity or capability to check something out, which I usually don't, find somebody who does. And there are plenty of people who can. So that was the primary lesson.
Were you ever stung again after that?
Oh, sure. I think when you're in the venture capital business, you're going to lose most of the time.
Is that right?
Well, I don't know anybody who wins most of the time, and our record's no worse than anybody else's. So, yeah, I would say that's the way it is. That's the reason why I say today, when you have these hedge funds and everybody else telling you they're doing nothing but winning, you better check their books, because they can't.
All right, now, you say, okay, you're not creative. Now, about 30 or so years ago, you started this thing at Sun Valley. Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk a little bit about this. So this is an annual event, where you bring some of the biggest leaders in business and entertainment and so forth for a retreat. And one of, I think, the inspired ideas that you had was to not just bring these leaders, but to also include their families, so that they will actually stay for an actual amount of time, not just for a day and fly out. And they come for about a week or so, and then you guys caucus or do business or whatever. So give us the inside poop on that, because we're not invited. Especially me, by the way. I'm not invited.
Well, you play your cards right. Let's see how the rest of this goes.
I say, I'm not invited. Trust me.
It started as a small thing. We were doing nothing. We were in a dead time. It was 1982. I had seen a show down at Coca-Cola when they took us over, and where they brought their bottlers together. And for some reason, I thought maybe we could do something. Their act was a little bit different, a little more grand. So I didn't. So I thought it was probably smarter if they brought their families. And so they brought their families, and little by little, other people came. It drew a crowd that drew a crowd. I don't think we did anything that was so spectacular, but if you're in Sun Valley in the summer and you're paying for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to get you get a few people, no matter what. And
how many folks now, this coming year or last year? How many do you have then? What's the volume of people?
About 450 adults and about 130 children under the age of 15.
And what goes on at the adult level? I mean, what are the people are on panels? Are there lectures?
There are panels. Some not corporate presentations. We don't do those anymore because I think everybody on Wall Street has a conference now. But we have what I like best now are panels of general interest where there's also something connecting to the business interests. But it's one of those things where it's very interesting to be involved in anything that becomes accepted because you never really understand why. But you recognize that it's happened. And people like to come to it now. So it's pretty easy now to get speakers. And we had a really interesting speech last year from the King of Jordan, who was a nice fellow. And if I were Barack Obama, I'd spend a lot of time with him. I'd probably get rid of my whole State Department and spend a lot of time with him. But I'd get rid of my whole State Department no matter what.
Would you invite Barack Obama to this thing?
No. Not because of Barack Obama. I couldn't care less about that. But you can't handle a president. Presidents don't travel with 6 or 7. This is a very small conference in a small town in the mountains. And the president, if we were honored and wanted to come, it would be a real pain in the neck.
I see.
I mean, I don't care who it is. Presidents travel with 2,000 to 3,000 people everywhere they go. That's bigger than the town.
I see. So it wouldn't work. Do you speak at this thing? Do you say a few words? Or?
No, just at the closing dinner, I thank the people, and then that's it. There are plenty of people who can speak pretty well.
Now, see, from my point of view, so you're down at a Coca-Cola plant, in 1980 or something, and you see that they bring the bottlers together and they have this thing, whatever this thing was, and you say, hey, I can do this with the people that I interact. To me, I see that as being very creative. And you don't see that as being creative?
No,
taking two different ideas and kind of putting them together and seeing that they can be connected?
No, I don't think of it that way. But
what would you call that?
Well, I think it's luck, that it worked, because it could have ended at the end of the first year.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it wasn't creative. It just means it wasn't successful.
All right, it was creative.
Ha! Thank you.
Well, we'll never get to the next question otherwise.
So interesting people are there. Now, Warren Buffett. Has Jimmy Buffett been there, by the way?
You're not that far off. I think they're cousins, and Jimmy did want to come 2 years
See?
ago.
Okay, so I know what I'm talking about. But Warren goes a lot, right? You invite him. He's a good friend of yours. Tell us a little bit about him. And he's been talking to people in Washington.
Warren's a genius and can do better sitting on a stage by himself, answering questions from an audience than anybody I've ever met. And 7 years ago, basically, predicted the market that we're in today. Almost exactly. And if you read his annual report a few years ago, he talked about these derivatives as weapons of mass destruction, I think. And he's just a flat-out statistical genius. Like all geniuses, he probably wouldn't make a great baseball manager, but in his field, he's probably the greatest mind that's ever been. And he's fun and very funny, and if he doesn't have a photographic memory, it's very close to it.
How often do you guys see each other?
Not often. I see Warren if he comes to town. Once a year, he may want to have dinner. He likes to have people come through Omaha, but he also likes to go to really bad restaurants. And so I'd rather wait till he comes to New York.
But he shows up every year.
We actually went up this August. We went up to see the tar sands up in Athabasca, which is not something that I would ordinarily look forward to. But it was interesting being with him.
And Bill Gates is a regular,
yeah,
right?
And Gates was there that day, too.
Tell us a few other people that we might have heard of that joined in the retreat.
Well, 400 people. We've been doing it
don't list them all.
27 years.
Just list two other names besides Buffett and Gates.
Well, what do you want?
Right, Rupert Murdoch, right.
All right, keep going. You've almost covered it.
Well, I'm hoping that... I really don't need you, Herbert. I can just do this myself, apparently. You want to join in here and get a piece of this, I would appreciate it.
You're the third person who said that to me today.
Is that right?
Yeah. No, but, it's Rupert is there. Howard Stern. I don't know what kind of names you want, but there are an awful lot of different people from virtually anybody from the entertainment business, and a lot of, and lately politicos. The most interesting politico, frankly, in the last 10 years. Well, we had Tony Blair. He did a nice job. But Sam Nunn was probably the most interesting and perceptive of the political people.
And what did he say, or what made that?
He talked about both the functioning of government, about foreign policy, about defense policy. He's just an extremely knowledgeable man. And very high, probably the highest quality senator that I've met in terms of his field, the depth and breadth of his knowledge.
And will you sit down, I mean, at Sun Valley and meet with these people like a one-on-one? I mean, will you have a special meeting time with Tony Blair, for example? Did you and Tony Blair go out and have some time alone?
No, because you've got 400 guests plus 130 children plus everything else. You don't have time for that.
I see.
So you're the host at your own cocktail party. You never even know how it went over afterwards. The main thing you want to do is get through it with nobody killing anybody else. But I mean, you recognize they do a good job, but they're not there for me. They're there for the crowd, and the crowd is very aggressive and gets to see them and talk to them and share ideas.
There's a great quote that I found that Michael Eisner said about your thing, which he said, "Sun Valley is a cross between summer camp and an SAT exam." Does that sound?
It can be heady. There's a lot of subject matter covered that requires concentration and focus, and and the people speaking are generally very smart, but they're very regular. We've had no troubles with any of them. One fellow once, but I won't tell you who he was.
I was just hoping you would.
No,
do you want me to guess? I can guess. I can go down the list of.
You could.
400.
You could, but but he's not there anymore. But basically, the people are very easy to get along with. A very regular group.
We're running out of time a little bit, and I want to touch on one last passion of yours, which takes you away from, or maybe not, the investment world, and that's the world of art. And I know, do you have someplace to be?
You said we're running out of time. I didn't say it.
It's a 1:45, and these people have lives.
Yeah, it's
so
also almost. I know some of them.
Yeah.
Art.
I want to talk a little bit about art. You are a passionate art aficionado, art collector. Tell us about that side of your life and what draws you to art and how that got started.
Well, I think that's from
You like American art, is that right?
I do like American art because that's what I could buy when I first went into the galleries. And I think the reason is art was considered a gut course when I was here at Williams. And, of course, I took all of those that I could. And nothing greater than the art course because you just go in, they turn the lights out, and they put pictures up on the wall. And all you have to have is an adequate memory. That this is Degas and that's Renoir. And it wasn't that hard.
It's much better now, but I mean, it's great now.
It was great then.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. I want to make sure that we are making that clear. I audited it last year. Did you know that? Why would you know that? Why would you know that?
Let me know when it's my turn.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I've collected American art, and it's because of Stoddard and Pearson and Faison and the course that they taught. And had I not come here and not taken that course, I don't think I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known what to buy. I wouldn't have known what I liked.
So what do you like? Tell us the kind of things.
I like recognizable, old-fashioned paintings that are pretty, basically. Very superficial. And, I don't care for modernism, postmodernism, so on and so on. Poor Michael Conforti, if he's here, hates my opinions on this stuff. Tadeo Ando bothers me. So at any rate, fairly simple stuff.
But Homer, Remington, you like those guys?
I like Homer, I like Remington, I like Haslam. I like all, things that I can understand.
And do you have any non-American art or no?
I have one that I bought from Ray Stark's estate. I'm drawing a blank on the name. But that was just because it was over his mantle in his house, and I remember that.
So it had sentimental value.
Yes.
And how often do you frequent museums and galleries and auctions?
Well, irregularly. I went to the Damien Hirst exhibit at Sotheby's in London about 2 months ago, which I thought was magnificent because, all my life I've been selling nothing for what I thought was a high price. And then I saw, and I realized that here's the world champ. And this guy. So anyway.
Is art a good investment?
No. It is if you hit on a picture and you buy it cheap and it goes up, obviously. But generally speaking, art funds and things like that are ridiculous. No, I don't think art is a good investment. And also, if you think of what it costs you to buy a painting, insure it, sit with it for 30, 40 years. Well, no, I don't think it's... You can get lucky, but if you're buying it... I never bought a painting because of market value. or potential market value. As a matter of fact, it's a negative. If a painting goes up an awful lot in value, you start looking at it differently.
All right, now before I ask
Still doesn't mean, Michael, that you're going to get it.
He's not going to get it? Yeah. All right, so let me do a little commercial here. You can take 2 seconds off, and it's going to be about me for just 15 seconds. So I want to announce that the next Gaudino Dialogue will, and this will be our last one of the year, is going to be on Wednesday, December 3rd at 8 p.m. It's going to be Deborah Robinson from the class of 78, the great social activist from Los Angeles will be coming in, and that's going to be in Brooks Rogers at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, December 3rd. So I hope that you can make that. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left. Let me ask you a couple of things. Tell me some people that you admire.
Oh, a whole load of them. I mean, it's too long a list. You could start. Actually, when we started on the issue of this Performing Arts Center, Hank Payne really understood what the needs were. Art Lefebvre, you remember, who used to run the gas station down there, really understood. As a matter of fact, I really wanted to put it where the parking lot is down there now because I wanted to feed business into Spring Street. And it wasn't mine to give, to determine, but I thought that was a great spot. And I think Spring Street lost a lot when it lost it. But I'm glad it's here. I'm glad Bill Ron did the job he did. But had we put it there, and I was going to name it, if I could have, if Morty would have allowed me, Arts Performing Center.
Really? Is that true?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, well, it's a missed opportunity. But so there are people I think almost every day I run into somebody I admire, somebody who has special human qualities. I think the job you do with the students you have, when I see you with the kids the way we were earlier, that's great. Mark Taylor is, a fabulous teacher. Bob Jackal's been the people I've seen here, wonderful teachers. And I don't think there's a more honorable profession than teaching. I'm not so sure about tenure, because I think it makes people lazy, and I don't think it's a good idea to have a guaranteed anything in life. But I don't know that much.
The market goes any lower, there might not be guarantees. So
well, I think this is inviolate.
You can't get me fired, can you? Is there a special little gesture you make to Morty and then that's it?
No, I know when I'm being ignored by Morty because it's always when he says, "I hear you."
You mentioned, we're almost out of time, but you mentioned the location of this building, and that was a little bit controversial. That kind of got a little bit heated. And did that bother you, or?
At the time it did. I didn't fully understand politics on a campus. And Hank was an extremely unpopular president at that time. Very good man. Whether he should have been president, that was a whole separate subject. But he was a good man. I think that he had riled the faculty, and to a certain extent, the Performing Arts Center became it was sort of like pin the tail on the donkey. It was something to tack on him. And I had asked him, when I told him I'd put up the amount of money I did, I said, I don't want to hang it out to dry because you can give a large amount of money and you can go through the normal bureaucratic process of a place like this, and schools are like this. And it could be 3-4 years before anybody makes a decision. So I said, check with whoever is vital, 6 or 7 people, whatever it is. And he did, and then there was a big outcry that he hadn't gone through the right process. And all bureaucracies worship process. And this school is not unlike other bureaucracies. Process becomes king. And I have no respect for process for the most part. So sure, it bothered me, and it was a difficult period, but it got done.
And you feel good about it now? You like it?
I like it, and I'd like to see it used better. And I think we have Morty to thank, because I think Morty really pulled it through at the end. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately it'll get run right. I'd like to see more Broadway people up here and more people invited who are professionals. And I think Sandra Burton's done a great job with her dance companies. But we've got, it's got a long way to go. It could improve an awful lot.
All right. So now we're at the end. I want you to share some life lessons or some advice that you can give to the students here. Things that maybe you wish you knew when you were here, or things that you've learned along the way that might be interesting for them to hear.
I think they're the same lessons every parent tells to every child, do what you enjoy. Don't worry about the money. Don't ever work for money, because it'll come your way. You know, this country is so great that if you're in most businesses, you're going to make enough money to afford your needs plus your excesses, plus probably your wretched excesses. Now, we're now living in an era that went exponentially past wretched excess, and where it was, matter of fact, I think I would describe this era in the last 10 years or 15 years as sort of radical capitalism. It's not legitimate capitalism, but it is to capitalism what the terrorists are to Islam, and they're not the real thing. And I think that what Wall Street has done, I'm taking this a little farther than you wanted me to, but I think what Wall Street's done is really a disgrace. And the idea that the government, so anyway, this goes back to the kids working for money, but the idea that the government should put up money to pay the bonuses of Morgan Stanley and I'm not picking on, I know a lot of people there I like, but Goldman Sachs and other firms, which is essentially what's happening here. The $250 billion they're talking about in equity is money that was taken out in the form of bonuses over the last 10 years from these firms. I think it's an outrage. And I think what the government should do, which you didn't ask me, but I see we're not going there, so I want to say it anyway, is have a rights deal in these firms at about 5% of their market value and put much more equity up, dilute the current shareholders, because if you're a shareholder in a badly managed company, you deserve to lose. I certainly have many, many times. And if you took these banks and the Wall Street firms, the present shareholders, for the most part, should be washed out. New equity should be put in both by the public and the existing shareholders, and then the government wouldn't have to put up that much. The balance between equity and debt is all wrong, I think. I think this is a bad bailout plan. But the principle of rewarding people in Wall Street who've been a significant cause of this problem is abhorrent. That's the end of that sermon.
Well, I think you're a creative guy. Herb Allen, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's really nice being with you. Thank you.